Thanks for taking the time to download this Negotiating with the Power of Understanding live podcast, created for the Knowledge Network of Thunderbird School of Global Management. To find more information on how to be an effective negotiator, please visit Dr. Karen Walsh's online educational series on Negotiating with the Power of Understanding at knowledgenetwork.thunderbird.edu/Walsh. In this series, you'll find a variety of podcasts, online discussions, and other resources that will help you succeed in the toughest negotiations. Learn from global leaders their secrets on negotiations. Online around the world, this is Thunderbird Knowledge Network, negotiating with the power of understanding.
Welcome back. It's Maria Leopoulou from Thunderbird School of Global Management. Today's topic will be the role of trust in successful marketing. And next to me I have Dr. Sundaresan Ram, Professor of Global Marketing and a well-renowned international marketing strategist. Thank you for being here, Professor.
My pleasure, Maria.
Professor Ram, besides being one of the favorite professors here at school, he is a well-published author in top journals and the winner of multiple awards both in his field as well as Teacher Excellence Awards. So,
and I paid Maria to say that.
That's very true. Well, he paid me very well.
Yeah.
Next to him, we have, of course, Dr. Karen Walsh. She's our cross-cultural negotiation expert, and as of course, Gediminas Almanda's lawyer and negotiation advisor.
He's a lawyer, but we'll tolerate him. It's okay. Yeah.
He's a lawyer. Yeah.
It's the U.S. mindset.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today with us. I'm gonna start our conversation with our first question, and since Professor Ram is here, I'm gonna take full advantage of him and put him on the spot right away.
There you go.
So, first question for our discussion for today is, we would like you to tell us what you think is the real goal of marketing. Is it earning trust or is it earning money?
All right. It's kind of like asking, do you marry your wife to have a long relationship or to have a transaction? And the way I look at life, I've been married only once, and it's a hard job keeping it for 28 years. But I'm going to say, if you earn trust, then you keep it for life. So in marketing, we always say you're either in a one-night stand, which is a transaction, and then you can repeat it only for so many times, or you have a customer for life, and then it's a franchise. So when you look at somebody like Apple or IBM, they own customers for life. So the way I think about it, it's similar. And so there are certain characteristics of trust, and there are certain downsides. For example, you don't betray your customers. You keep your promises. You always deliver what you said you would. That's a relationship. You deliver a low price, a cheap date, that's a transaction. And there are companies that do both really well. So you have to pick what you want to do. But if you believe that 80% of the money is made through customers who stay with you for life, that's a marriage. If you believe it's hit and miss, it's a transaction. So to me, relationships are based on trust. Transactions are based on price. We'll take it from there, and we have a panel that have their own experiences.
Before I take it to the panel, I would like you to tell me how do you think that you can actually build this trust through marketing?
Two ways. You can reinforce positive experiences, like always remembering your wife's anniversaries and birthdays. That's positive. And you never fail. Like I just came back from China, and my wife said, "What did you bring for me?" And I said, "Oops." Now, that's a problem. Or you can minimize the downside, which is eliminate problems you have in the relationship, like Tylenol. If they have contaminated glass in a bottle of their pills, they recall 8 million off the shelf. At day one, they reinforce the trust. So two ways you look at it. you upside the positive, you downside the negative. Firestone. People died, they make tires, and they said, oh, only 4 people died. Let's see if it's real. And then within a month, 10 more people died. You just shot yourself in the foot. So you can take the Johnson & Johnson. Even if one customer is upset, we pull $8 million off the shelf to build trust. Or you can take the Firestone, which says, just 4 out of a million. And so if you think only one bad experience is a reflection of building trust, it's like Thunderbird. You have one bad class, you yank it. One bad professor, you fire them. One bad person in the IBIC, let them go. One bad item on the menu, get rid of it. So a lot of it is you build the upside, minimize the downside. To me, that's the trust. You know, if my wife says, do the dishes, do the laundry, better do it. I build trust. That's the only thing that's kept our marriage alive, and the fact that I travel a lot so she doesn't see me. So sometimes you have to hide from your customers. You only have to be there when you need them. But when they need you, you better be there. And then you deliver your promise.
Dr. Walsh, does it make any sense to you from a negotiation perspective?
Yes, and I've been thinking a lot about this since we have your expertise here today. One of the things we're really interested in regarding negotiation is that we talk a lot about how to build trust in different cultural settings. So we have some ideas about that for negotiation. Tell us a little bit about your experience on building trust in different cultural settings.
Well, think about this. When I go to the Indian culture, which is where I grew up in, trust is almost gender related. There's a certain role you play as a man or a woman. I work a lot with the Saudi companies. It's the same way. The men have certain roles to play. And the U.S. is much more different. I think it's morphing into, it's not role related, I say, not gender related, but more role related. It's almost like there's an implicit element of trust. There are certain things we talk about contractually. So in my house, there are certain things I do as a husband that we don't even have to speak about. And then there are certain things that are very clear, and then it depends on the day my wife works and wife doesn't work. I think it's the same in business. There are certain implicit behaviors that partners expect that are culturally related. I would hate to say male-female, but it's almost that way. And then there are certain things we kind of learn as we go along. And this is what makes business difficult, because it's almost like when we shift every 500 miles in Europe, that the German relationship and the French relationship and the Spanish relationship and it transforms. And the same in India. It's almost like you go from South India to North India. There are expectations on how people play in business and how they play at the home. Now, I have to tell you, in the business setting, there are cultures in Asia are male dominated. There are expectations, and people run that way. The interesting thing is more and more women are driving Asian business because the sons are bums who are inheriting money from their parents. And so most of the entrepreneurship is coming from younger people. So it's completely different. So if you ask me that, is there a recipe for this? No. But I think the key, Karen, is understanding that as we move every 500 miles, the rules change.
I believe the lawyers think they have a recipe, and from the legal perspective, they consider marketing people being pretty creative. So they kind of want to help them to be more trustworthy, requiring to disclose that information or doing this in one or another way. So they think they have a recipe.
Yeah, but I think this is key. In most relationships, transparency. It's understanding what you think, what I think, is the same thing, regardless of the oceans and the boundaries. So to me, German trust is completely different from French trust. And Indian trust, and Texan trust, and Californian trust. So understanding really what trust means. Is it a handshake? Is it how many families or generations we went back to? And I think the bigger thing is, what if we fail once and we cross and we hurt each other? Is there forgiveness? What's the extent? Would we still be friends? To me, in that sense, relationship is as personal in the family setting as a business setting. If my brother cheats me in a business setting, will I forgive him? Because he is blood. And to understand these kind of things is really understanding how business and a culture works. And understanding if I can be best friends with my ex-wife, which is unheard of but increasingly happening in a business setting, is even though she's now, or he is with another girl, or she is with another, we are still best friends. To me, all of this says I can still trust you in a business setting, but not in a personal way. It's a complex process. But really, if you want to have a customer for life, it's about having forgiveness beyond the first mistake. Because all companies are going to make mistakes. And this is, to me, when I define trust, it's the extent of forgiveness. And that's culturally driven.
Well, that's a very interesting concept. Like, again, from the legal perspective, there is no forgiveness.
Exactly. Especially in this culture, right?
Yeah,
I will sue you to your last penny.
Exactly. It's and the question is where to find an opportunity. So that's even proactive, looking for the opportunities.
Right.
And then we probably cannot talk the trust from this perspective. In let's say in a legal perspective, trust doesn't exist. This concept doesn't exist.
Cannot. It cannot. And see, this to me is a paradox, because I come from a culture that says everybody is human.
And that there are imperfections.
Absolutely.
Right.
And everybody has a
account for that.
temporary moment of failure. And my life has one moment of perfection. Everything else is a failure. So, right? So when you look at that, I should be sued so many times. But I wouldn't, because I've served students and I've failed students. So when you start looking at things that way, I really think trust is, you don't want to fail again, but you want to reassure your customers, I'm sorry I failed the first time, and I'll do my best not to fail again. This is why Japanese companies apologize. Because every quarter they take out advertisements and say, we want to earn your trust. Because they apologize to customers they failed, the customers they thought they failed, and the customers they thought they failed but don't know. They say, we apologize to all of you. We're going to take media ads, newspaper. We're sorry. And they say, but we are just hoping this doesn't happen again.
So this is very similar to themes that we have in negotiation around integrity.
Right.
And also what's so important is how you are treated.
Correct.
So even if there is a mistake or we have non-performance issues, rather than going to the law, we would actually say we would problem solve with each other, or we would have some integrity about forgiveness.
Sure.
Or start to build some kind of mechanism where we can solve these problems over time, as opposed to believing that there is perfection once the agreement is finished,
Right.
or once the product is delivered. That there still is this method
Aspect, yeah.
of actually the way
Treating
we treat
customers.
each other.
So I'm curious
How do you
to know,
define that?
How do you find the European, shall we say broad, Western European, Eastern, versus the US way? Because I have the Asian mindset which says, screw you.
Like in old Europe, let's call it, it's very good observation you made that the differences inside are also pretty huge. The trust understanding in Scandinavia region is completely different from trust understanding going south or going east. And what we have definitely observed is it is no problem to do a business in Scandinavia where you call a company for the first time and you say, you know, I want to order this and this amount of that product. And they just deliver you and send you an invoice. Nobody really asks you for a prepayment or something like that. And this is a trust issue again. So when the business crosses the nationals and then goes to another countries, then it goes differently. But in general, if we would compare the culture, U.S. culture and a European culture from a legal perspective, that's a huge difference.
Now, let me tell you, when I worked as a sales engineer in India, there was a guy I would sell $1 million shipment to. He wouldn't pay me for 6 months. It's a game. I'd go and say, he'll give me a check, put it in the bank, it'll bounce. I go say, what the hell? They say, oh, sorry, I paid someone else. He give me the same check, and it's post-dated, by the way. It'll bounce again. And the third time it will clear. But I did business with the guy who was one of the most successful guys in the business. If I do this in this country, my boss would fire me in 2 months.
If you survive 2 months.
If I do.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to be followed by the big lawsuit.
Big time. So, but really, I think there are 2 levels of trust. If you work for a company, one is with your boss and your employers, and one is with your distributors and customers. And actually, I found the people who are most successful, if you own your distributors and customers, you own your bosses. So I would go tell my boss, this guy will pay, if not, you can fire me. And the customers who buy from him will pay. It's just they pad the schedule so they float the interest. And that's what they do. So trust to me is really about, ultimately, if you own the customer, you own the whole system. Because I tell Angel Cabrera, if you don't have the students and the professors, you don't have a job. Your job is to own the students who come back. And that's what the professors enable. And if you have trust with the students who come back, your job is easy. And for most businesses, I think if you have employees who own customers and they're not in the one-night stand, and that's the real, I think this is where Thunderbird doesn't get the relationship revenue, because we are one of the highest number of alumni in the system, but we have the lowest donations for the size we have, because we don't build trust while they are in the system, and we treat them like they are objects rather than long-term customers. And the strongest universities in the world own customers for life. And here, they come, they transact on everything they do, and when you start doing that, you minimize loyalty and trust.
Well, you're part of an initiative here.
I'm glad to be.
This is our attempt to have outreach to our alumni and engage alumni,
And
and
that's
to be
why I'm
part
telling people,
exactly,
guys,
be a part
whatever
of
has
this.
happened before,
This is continuing practice and education.
I'm saying it's all in the past. We want to apologize like the Japanese and say, we want you to be part of the system.
and engage with us here.
Exactly.
Professor, do you think it's, do you recommend that if a company makes a mistake or is involved in a scandal, do you think the company should actually, in their marketing campaign, should they actually apologize?
It's perfectly okay. You know, every time I forgot a gift for my wife, it ends in 30 seconds when I walk in the door. Don't deny it, and if the customer calls you on it, accept. And I think most companies make the mistake. This is why, for me, the best companies are the ones that say, we screwed up. We're human. And, you know, even though we are right 98% of the time, the 2% of the time, forgive us.
Could you share with us some best practices or some examples that companies actually rebuild trust after a scandal?
I'm telling you, Johnson & Johnson, Tylenol, 2 bottles were contaminated with glass reported by housewives. They yanked $8 million off the shelf in one day. Okay? If the entire shipment is destroyed, they lose. It's okay.
What about situations where...
Let me give you a different example. Nestle. They were diluting babies' milk in South Africa, killing babies. Nestle says mothers are doing something wrong. It destroyed not only their milk business, but all their chocolate and everything. There was a boycott Nestle. You don't, even if the customer is doing something wrong, you take steps to prevent it. It's okay. It's all right. So the history is replete with examples of companies like that. Now, you can think about Apple. If any of their products fail, they will take action. So to me, socially responsible is not just about being ecologically responsible. You have to be responsible for the paying customer who expects something. So to me, when I look at Thunderbird, and so I'm talking to all the audience here, if you don't help me with my job, if you don't help me with my library, if you don't help me with my food service, you're not being responsible. All that is part of why certain brands can build a connection with the customer and certain brands don't. And so we don't have to hire outside consultants to build the customer experience. If any of these things fail, and it's not just the classroom, it's not the courses, not the professors, but your 2-year experience or 18 months. To me, that's building trust. Every time you touch me or talk to me, build a relationship. You're in a marriage. Every time you use me, you're in a transaction.
What marketing tools can you use?
Talk, relate, engage, 2-way. Simple. You don't impose. You know, every time my wife says, we need to go out for dinner, I know she wants to talk. It's not about the food. It's just hanging out and listening. And that's what most customers want to do. Engage me.
And this is a theme we've been talking a lot about in our series, is not only the analytics and the strategic elements to make us good marketers or finance, negotiation people, but it is these more personal and these human dimensions.
That's it.
And you've talked a little bit here about humility.
Yeah, totally.
And,
Listen.
and actually take some time to listen. And
Don't
a lot of
interject.
what we're talking about here is true understanding.
Yeah.
So you would say that a very good marketer really understands
Listens.
and listens.
Listens. And
That you would say that kind of human dimension
I know.
has significant
I
impact.
think I'm a good husband. My wife doesn't.
It's all in the perception.
And so the more I listen to her, I say,
And you understand.
yeah, it's like, I thought I did.
So what is that element that takes you from listening to understanding?
Well, listen,
That to me
you've
is-
got to
is
listen
an-
a lot and then rephrase it and say, so you're saying that I haven't bought you a gift wherever I go. Yes. And why is that important? Because I wish wherever you go, you're thinking of me. And to me, that's product design.
And in negotiation, we call that the loop of understanding.
That's it.
That's what we call it.
Or service. And I'm going, I've lost touch. I think I know, but I really don't.
That is a human communication
huge.
skill that is primary.
You know, and it's a moving target because I knew her from the time she was 19, but now she's 50. So the target's moving. And so I'm still thinking of the 19-year-old customer. Well, she just still likes to go dancing even though we can't move, but that's okay. But it's a moving target, and the emotional needs of the customer change.
Right.
And so the only way you're going to feel that is just listen, both ways,
Exactly.
both ways. And I think at some level most organizations have to get this human element right. In a cultural context, different age groups. If you understand the fact that 40% of Latin America and Eastern Europe are below the age of 20, and they are where the US was 50 years ago, that's where the growth is. They're young, excited, and different, and the US, the average age is 50. We're going to be playing bingo and living in retirement communities, and our emotional needs are completely different. And what trust means to a 50-year-old is completely different from a 20-year-old who's saying, will I still see this boy or girl tomorrow? And will this pair of jeans I'm wearing mean that he'll still talk to me? Versus a 60-year-old saying, does he have a retirement account with Fidelity or JP Morgan? So to me, trust in marketing is, there are two rules. You never violate it. Because if you fail someone after years, then recovery is difficult. If you do, it has to be quick. And then with younger people, you build it. I have to say, my kids are building trust with Amazon, Apple, Netflix. They're not building it with Sears or Carrefour or Tesco. They don't even know what that is. But they're building with Ryanair. My son's in Spain. He's traveling every day. EasyJet. Completely different. But they own, these brands own customers for life. So to me, trust is about owning people for life. That's a franchise.
And as you said, it's an experience. And
It
we talk
is.
about this in terms of negotiation too, right?
Yeah. It's like a house that pays rent for life.
So if this is going to be the last question for today.
Really?
Yes. I know you have fun here, but unfortunately, we're almost up.
Shut me up.
The last question is, so we see that you need to listen. What mediums, how, like, can you give us some examples of what can companies do in order for them to listen?
All right. So I'm going to say, first thing, for most businesses today, you're only as good as your weakest employee. So if there are really poor employees in front of customers, fire them or hide them. Don't put them in front of the customer. They're going to destroy your brand. So, I travel by airlines and I say, this employee should be lugging baggage, not talking to customers. Or this steward or stewardess shouldn't be talking to a customer. Or this professor shouldn't be in the classroom. Or this admissions officer shouldn't be talking to a student. Get rid of them. They're going to destroy trust and your brand. You're only as good as your weakest employee in front of the customer. In a service business, it's not this bottle of water. It's the experience customers feel. So if you want to build trust, have good employees, train them, motivate them, and make them belong. That would be my biggest message to most customers. Second, whatever you have 5 years ago is no longer good enough. You have to constantly change what you offer because the people who are coming in, I mean, look at Thunderbird. We now have more Asians coming in to understand the US business model. When I first started here, we had Europeans and Latin Americans. Now we have East Europeans and Asians. So the offering and the classroom experience cannot be the same. You have to adapt. It's like Starbucks, right? When I go and the barista knows, you want this, cafe latte, but a little bit of cinnamon, right? And they know. It's almost at that level. We are going to the age of mass customization. We no longer have one recipe that fits everyone. It's almost like Karen and I have to go into a classroom and we feel the pulse of the class and then we can pitch. That's the game most companies have to play, including consulting companies. What works in the US doesn't work anywhere.
It's exactly the same game that negotiators all over the world in different contexts, different generations have to play the same game. Feel that pulse.
Right.
And to adapt to that particular situation.
So if you go to Arabia now, well, Saudi Arabia, I feel actually they understand Western culture, but still make it work in my culture where the women can't work, they still have to do certain things in a different way, and they still want to be open, but give me things that can work. When oil runs out, we still want our people to be smart, right? And trust there has a different meaning. They will only give business to people who are family related, but still educate people, because education there is a privileged good. They subsidize everything, the oil companies. So this is where I see a lot of Europeans and Asians make money there because it's in and out transaction, but not necessarily trust-based.
Any last comments?
It's got to be legal. You have to sue me or tell me something.
I'm just listening now. That's what you know. It's both way communication, but I'm just coming from the north being a bit late in response.
That's okay. That's all right. No, I would say if the world moved away from fighting to figuring out ways to cooperating, to me that would be the meaning of trust. I think it's established at different levels. I think the Western cultures are more formal. I think the real challenge is understanding trust at an informal level, handshake, and knowing if they'll still pay me. And this is the biggest challenge in marketing. I go into Saudi Arabia, I shake hands, and we're starting to do business. I don't know if I'll get paid. But that's how I grew up.
And that's the problem with the legal side is that the classical legal education is focused on a dispute resolution, which means litigation.
Yes.
So lawyers are trained from the very beginning to understand any business in the sense of litigation.
Exactly.
And that's completely wrong. This is the wrong concept that drives the whole system then crazy, because everybody is hunting for business
reason, right? But I would say it's wrong, but in certain contexts it's necessary.
as a protection, but not
Right.
as a proaction.
It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the downside of doing business, because what if you get screwed and someone doesn't pay you? And then you're governed by the laws of the local country. And so what happened was your trust got violated. At a business partner level. Ultimately, though, when I think of a brand like Nike or Microsoft or Google or Apple, the trust is at the consumer level. And if you can deliver that promise worldwide, you have customers for life. And then you have the issues with Apple with Foxconn in China, Microsoft with people who steal their software and violate. Like when I work in Russia, it's anyone, or India, they can just take it, and then you sue me. So to me, the ultimate trust is with the customer.
That reflects, I mean, the whole measurement is based on how the customer trusts the brand.
Because I think that person pays your bills. If they don't come back, there's nothing. And if you own them, you own everything, right?
With that comment, I'm gonna do our usual wrap-up for today. As we learned and understood today after listening to this panel, we see how important it is to have customers for life. The trust should be at the consumer level, and considering that 80% of our business comes usually from customers for life, you see how important trust should be. First, through marketing, you have to reinforce the positive experiences, and second, to make sure you never fail. If you do make a mistake, it's okay. It's companies. It's okay to apologize and accept responsibility and show that they're human and they're willing to correct any mistake, even if it's in a small scale or even just one dissatisfied consumer. It's important to see the difference in different cultures. For example, in Asia, it's gender-related. In the US, role-related, and there's implicit trust there. And to always remember that as we move every 500 miles, roles change and trust is different.
And remember, Maria is going to contribute to Thunderbird for life. Yeah, just checking.
Exactly.
I trust you to do
it
that.
It is a trust. It is a trust, and we have to see if it's long-term relationship.
Ah, there we go.
Social responsibility. It's
Ah.
not just ecology. It's
Checking.
building consumer experience.
Mm-hmm.
Important for someone to
Damn
actually.
those lawyers! Yeah.
The lawyers know nothing about trust. We learned today.
No, they do, but they have degrees of trust.
They have a different understanding.
Yeah.
Different
I
understanding.
think it's a different lens. They even defend people they don't trust. That blows my mind when I watch these legal shows, right? You still have to defend them. I'm going, how the hell can you do that? Because they're entitled to a fair defense. I'm like, if my student cheats, I'm going to fail him. There's no defense. So that is a different level of trust. I don't know if it's mercenary, opportunity. I don't know what we call it, even in the corporate. But that really blows my mind. You can defend someone even though you think they could be guilty because they're entitled to fair defense. Maybe that exists only in this country. Maybe I knew. But that's like saying a consumer cheated. It's like McDonald's, right? They sued a consumer for this thing being too hot. They got burned. So
So we see how important actually honesty is in building trust, and
integrity,
marketing.
yeah.
how important it is for you to actually have the integrity and the honest relationship and use marketing in a way that, because even if you if you try to gain trust for one time, the goal is to have long-term relationship.
That's a transaction. Yeah.
So talking to your customers, engaging, relating, and as we said, truly understanding through listening and through the loop of understanding. Always, that has to be continuous. The target is always moving. And just a few tips for the end. To build trust relationships, companies should be very careful of the employees. It's that the image of the trust and the brand that they show, you're always as good as your weakest employer.
Employee?
Employee. True. Thank you for correcting me. Second, constantly change. The age of mass customization is now, and you need to understand and customize the expectations. And the third thing, take into consideration culture, and both to a formal and to an informal level. Thank you very much for today.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next time.
Thank you.
Online around the world, this is Thunderbird Knowledge Network, negotiating with the power of understanding.